The wine shimmered green under the chandelier. Hae-Rin saw it. Her husband, Korean Mafia boss Jun-seok Kang, sitting close enough to touch but worlds away, didn't. His hand moved toward the glass. 3 seconds. That's all she had. 3 seconds to decide whether to save the man who'd stopped seeing her years ago. She reached across the silk tablecloth, lifted the glass, and drank. But here's what nobody knew in that moment. Not Jun-seok, not his mother watching with razor-sharp eyes from across the table, not even cousin Min-jae who'd poisoned that wine. Hae-Rin didn't just drink it to save him. Part of her drank it to finally be seen. Before you judge what she's about to do, pause. Because this isn't a story about poison. It's about what happens when a woman becomes so invisible that disappearing feels easier than being ignored. If you've ever felt unseen in a relationship, tap like now and subscribe to this channel. This story might explain a feeling you've never been able to name. This is Hae-Rin, 32 years old, wife to Jun-seok Kang for 8 years, daughter-in-law to Madam Kang, the silver-haired matriarch who'd survived 5 decades in this world by noticing what others dismissed. She was good at her role, exceptional even. She managed the household with military precision, kept peace between Jun-seok and his traditional mother when business decisions clashed with family expectations, softened the edges of a world built on violence and cold pragmatism, made everything run so smoothly that everyone stopped noticing she was the one making it run at all. Jun-seok built empires, shipping routes, port access, illegitimate businesses that laundered illegitimate money. Important work. Dangerous work. Work that required his complete focus. So Hae-Rin became background, competent, useful, essential, and completely unseen. Tonight, in the private dining hall of the Four Seasons, that invisibility was about to cost her everything. In the world of Korean organized crime, there are rules even bosses must follow. Rules about loyalty, about succession, about protecting what's yours. But there's one rule nobody talks about, the one that matters most. Never ignore the woman holding your empire together. On this particular Friday evening in February, that rule was about to be broken in the most devastating way possible. The private dining hall was sealed off from the world. No windows, no outside noise, just velvet curtains, mahogany panels, and the kind of silence that comes from legacy money and controlled power. The chandelier above them glowed warm gold, its reflection dancing across crystal stemware and bone-white china. This was where families like theirs made decisions that couldn't be spoken about in daylight. Table geometry told you everything you needed to know. Left side, Hae-Rin. White silk dress selected by Jun-seok's assistant, not him. Hands folded, posture perfect. The portrait of compliance. Center, Jun-seok Kang. Black Tom Ford suit, phone out, scrolling through logistics spreadsheets while explaining port insurance loopholes to his mother. Not unusual. He'd answered emails during his father's funeral too. Right side, Min-jae, the younger cousin. Navy suit still smelling faintly of tailor's chalk. He's sweating despite the air conditioning set to exactly 68 degrees. Opposite, Madam Kang. 70 years old, burgundy Chanel, silver hair swept into place, watching everything with the stillness of a woman who'd learned to survive by reading what others missed. This is how power arranges itself. From the outside, it looked perfect. From the inside, it was already fracturing. For 8 years, Hae-Rin had been the family's shock absorber. She translated Madam Kang's traditional expectations into language Jun-seok wouldn't dismiss. She explained Jun-seok's cold business logic in ways that didn't wound his mother's pride. She held space no one remembered to thank her for creating. She was good at reading rooms. Had to be. Tonight, she was reading everything. The senior advisor, Mr. Choi, sitting 2 seats down, he kept glancing at Min-jae. Quick, nervous, like he was waiting for something to go wrong. Min-jae's fingers drummed the table. Once, twice, 3 times. Stopped. Hae-Rin knew that tell. The rhythm of guilt, trying to stay hidden. The sommelier arrived with the wine Jun-seok had ordered without looking up. The bow was too deep. The apology too smooth. My apologies for the delay, Mr. Kang. Half a second too rehearsed, like he'd practiced it. Hae-Rin's pulse quickened. Not panic. Pattern recognition. Something was wrong. The 2015 Bordeaux. Expensive. The kind of wine you order to impress the senior advisors Jun-seok had invited to discuss the shipping contract closing next week. Opened with ceremony. Cork presented. A wine poured with precision into the crystal glass. The ones Hae-Rin had selected 3 years ago when they'd renovated this private space. Placed in front of Jun-seok. He didn't look at it. He was explaining container routing to Min-jae. Numbers. Logistics. The language he spoke fluently. The language he'd never taught Hae-Rin. Because, as he'd said twice in the last month, you don't understand the business. But Hae-Rin understood numbers. She understood desperation. And she understood the way Min-jae was watching that wine glass now. Not like a cousin watching his family member drink, but like a man watching a timer countdown, waiting for detonation. She understood what she was seeing in the glass itself. The viscosity was off, just slightly. The way it settled when the sommelier set it down. Too thick, too slow. The light from the chandelier hit it wrong. Green, faint beneath the deep red. Bordeaux doesn't shimmer. This did. Hae-Rin's mind calculated faster than her heart could catch up. Poison in Jun-seok's glass, at a family dinner, which meant someone at this table, someone close enough to compromise the wine supplier, had decided tonight was the night Jun-seok Kang died. 3 seconds. That's how long she had before his hand reached the glass. 3 seconds to decide. Option 1. Speak. Warn him. Watch him dismiss her the way he dismissed everything she said that didn't fit his immediate agenda. You're being paranoid, Hae-Rin. And if she was wrong, if she caused a scene over wine that was fine, she'd become the hysterical wife who didn't understand how these dinners worked. Option 2. Say nothing. Let him drink. Watch him die. Become the widow everyone pitied but no one actually saw. Option 3, the one that made no logical sense, the one that felt like inevitability. I want to taste your selection. Her voice was barely above a murmur, the kind of tone she used when asking if he'd remembered to call his mother. Soft, undemanding, easy to ignore. He didn't pause his conversation with Min-jae, didn't look at her, just kept talking about container manifests and customs clearance. Hae-Rin reached across the 18 inches that separated them. Her fingers closed around the stem of the wine glass. She lifted it. The liquid caught the light. Green shimmer beneath red. She brought it to her lips. Metallic. Chemical. Wrong. She drank anyway. The burn started in her throat. Not the warm bloom of good wine. Fire spreading fast. Her chest tightened. A heart stuttering like it had forgotten its rhythm. Her hand flew to her chest. Not dramatic, reflexive, the way you grab for something solid when the ground shifts beneath you. The napkin slipped from her other hand. White linen. Purple-black stains spreading across it like watercolor, almost artistic under the chandelier's glow. 18 inches away, Jun-seok was still talking. And if the shipment clears by Tuesday, we're ahead of schedule. He hadn't noticed. Madame Kang had. Her eyes snapped to Hae-Rin, then to the napkin, then to Min-jae, whose face had drained of all color, but Jun-seok kept talking about shipping schedules. He hadn't noticed his wife was dying. Hae-Rin's vision tunneled. The chandelier above fractured into kaleidoscope shards. Gold light splitting into 1,000 pieces that didn't fit together anymore. Sound distorted. Jun-seok's voice became underwater garble, muffled, distant, like listening to someone speak from the other side of a pool. Her heart stuttered against her ribs. Not the steady rhythm it had kept for 32 years. This was different, irregular, like it was trying to remember how to beat and failing. The metallic taste spread. Copper, chemical, wrong. Madame Kang saw it first. The matriarch's eyes snapped from Hae-Rin to the napkin with its purple-black stain, then to Min-jae, whose face had turned the color of ash. She didn't gasp, didn't shout, didn't reach for Hae-Rin. Instead, she set down her wineglass with deliberate care, the kind of control that comes from 5 decades of surviving rooms where panic gets you killed. When she spoke, her voice was quiet, precise. Min-jae, call Dr. Lim, now. Tell him aconite poisoning. The cousin froze. His mouth opened. No sound came out. Because Madame Kang hadn't asked what happened. She'd diagnosed it, and she'd used his name first. Not as a command, as an accusation. Mother, I don't... She cut him off. The glass was meant for your brother. She drank it for him. Call the doctor. Each word landed like a gavel. Min-jae's hands shook as he pulled out his phone. The screen lit up his face, pale, sweating, guilty. He dialed. Jun-seok was still talking. So if the shipment clears by Tuesday, it was the absence of sound that finally cut through. The silence where Hae-Rin's soft breathing usually was. The space she'd always filled without him noticing. He turned. She was slumped against the chair, one hand still pressed to her chest, the other limp on the table beside the stained napkin. Her lips had a faint purple tinge. Her eyes were open but unfocused, staring at something he couldn't see. Hae-Rin. Nothing. Hae-Rin! Louder this time. Urgent. She didn't respond. And for the first time in 8 years, since the night his father was assassinated, and he'd taken over the organization at 29, Jun-seok Kang felt genuine fear. The room moved. Senior advisors stood, chairs scraped against hardwood. Mr. Choi reached for his phone. Madame Kang raised one hand. Stop. No one leaves. No one calls anyone except Dr. Lim. This family handles its own emergencies. Her voice carried absolute authority, the kind you don't question. Not if you want to stay in this room. Not if you want to stay alive. She looked at her son. Jun-seok, get her on the floor, elevate her legs, keep her conscious. He'd lifted bodies before. He disposed of threats in back rooms of warehouses, negotiated under gunpoint in shipping containers, watched men die and felt nothing because feeling meant weakness. But when he lifted Hae-Rin, his wife, the woman he hadn't truly looked at in months, his hands shook. She was lighter than he remembered, 32 years old, and she felt fragile in his arms, breakable. Or maybe he'd just forgotten what it felt like to hold her. He lowered her to the floor. Hardwood. Cold. He grabbed a folded napkin from the table, placed it under her head. Hae-Rin, stay with me. Look at me. Her eyes drifted. Unfocused, he pressed 2 fingers to her wrist. Pulse. Faint. Irregular. His other hand went to her neck. Carotid artery. Thready. He'd learned this in the military. Before the empire. Before the marriage. And before he'd become the kind of man who forgot to notice his wife was in the room. Hae-Rin, can you hear me? Nothing. But through the metallic burn and the way her heart kept forgetting to beat, Hae-Rin felt his arms around her, heard him saying her name. Not the distracted, "Hae-Rin, can you handle this?" she'd heard for 8 years. This was different, urgent, afraid, and beneath the pain, beneath the fear that she might actually die, there was something else, something she was ashamed to acknowledge even as poison shut down her organs. Relief. She finally mattered, even if mattering meant dying. The worst part wasn't the poison. It was the 7 seconds. 7 seconds between Hae-Rin's hand flying to her chest and Jun-seok finally stopping talking. 7 seconds where he continued explaining container manifests. She completely unaware that 18 inches away, his wife was dying. So the customs hold shouldn't affect the timeline if we... The napkin hit the floor. White linen, purple-black spreading like ink. He didn't pause. 7 seconds of Hae-Rin's vision narrowing, heartbeats scattering, metallic taste flooding her mouth. Madame Kang moved first. Not toward Hae-Rin, toward Min-jae. Her hand shot across the table, surgical, gripping her nephew's wrist. "Don't," she said. "Absolute." Min-jae froze. His eyes went to Hae-Rin, slumped against the chair, lips turning purple. Then to his phone, then to the door. "Look at me." Guilt doesn't hide well in the young. It leaks through skin, pools in eyes. "How much did they pay you?" Not if. How much? "I didn't." She wasn't supposed to. How much? 2 million USD. They said it would look natural. A heart failure. No one would question. Question what? Jun-seok's voice cut through. Finally, he'd stopped talking. He turned, saw his mother's hand locked around Min-jae's wrist, saw his cousin's face, pale and shaking, saw the napkin, saw Hae-Rin. The world stopped. She was barely breathing, one hand still pressed to her chest, the other limp, fingers curled inward like she was holding on to something slipping away. Her eyes were open, but unfocused, staring past him at the chandelier. "Hae-Rin?" She didn't respond, didn't blink, didn't move. He was on his feet, his chair clattered, his phone, always in his hand, always more important, dropped to the table. He reached for her. For the first time in 8 years, Jun-seok touched his wife without multitasking. No phone, no conversation mid-sentence, no split attention. Just his hands on her shoulders, just her weight, too light, collapsing against him. "Get Dr. Lim." "Already called," Madame Kang said. "Steady. Lock the doors. No one leaves." Jun-seok lowered Hae-Rin to the floor. He pressed 2 fingers to her neck. Carotid pulse, weak, erratic. He'd been trained for this. Military field medicine. Assess, stabilize, don't panic. But his hands were shaking. This wasn't a soldier. This was Hae-Rin, the woman he'd stopped seeing somewhere between year 2 and year 3, when running the organization became everything, and she became background, reliable, always there. So he stopped checking if she still wanted to be. "Stay with me," he said. She didn't answer. Her breathing grew shallower. He looked up. "What happened?" His mother's face was stone. "She drank your wine." "What?" "The poison was meant for you. She saw it, and she drank it anyway." The room tilted. Jun-seok looked down, her lips purple-tinged, her pulse fading under his fingertips, and understood. His wife had just saved his life, and he hadn't even noticed she'd moved. Dr. Lim arrived in 11 minutes. Black bag, calm face, the kind of doctor paid well to ask no questions and arrive fast. He knelt, checked her pulse, her pupils, lifted her wrist, examined the purple webbing spreading beneath skin. Aconite, wolfsbane derivative, cardiotoxic. He looked at Jun-seok. This dose was calibrated for your size, your weight, your metabolism. He pulled a syringe from his bag. She's half your weight. It's working faster. Junseok's voice came out raw. Can you save her? Dr. Lim's pause was a fraction too long. I can try. Dr. Lim worked with clinical precision. IV inserted, atropine dripping, activated charcoal through a tube. Aconite blocks the heart's electrical signals. We're overriding the interruption before permanent damage. Junseok watched purple webbing spread beneath Hae-Rin's skin. How long? 12 hours before we know if there's lasting cardiac damage. Dr. Lim adjusted the drip. If she doesn't respond... Madame Kang stood behind them, watching. She'd sent the advisors out, locked the doors. Her gaze shifted to Min-jae, pressed against the wall, ashen. Explain. It wasn't supposed to be her. Obviously. Keep talking. Busan Syndicate. 6 weeks ago, they said Junseok was expanding too fast, said he'd become a problem that needed solving. Junseok stayed silent, eyes on Hae-Rin. They wanted it clean. Aconite mimics cardiac arrest. No one would question it. So you poisoned the wine. I paid the sommelier. He was supposed to pour it directly in front of Junseok. Min-jae's hands shook. I didn't think. She never touches his things. She never interrupts. She just sits there. Sits there. Invisible. Safe to ignore. I thought even if she noticed, she wouldn't say anything. And even if she tried, he wouldn't listen. He never. Stop. Junseok's voice was barely a whisper. But guilt hemorrhaged out of Min-jae. I counted on it. On her being invisible. On you not seeing her. I said stop. Madame Kang moved. 3 steps. You didn't just betray your cousin. You weaponized his failure. She paused. You turned neglect into a murder weapon. Junseok stayed on the floor. One hand monitoring Hae-Rin's pulse, the other clenched white. He'd built an empire on control, but he'd created the opening that nearly killed him. Through blindness, he'd stopped seeing Hae-Rin so completely that his cousin had relied on it, had planned around it. How many people know? Madame Kang asked. Busan executives, the sommelier. Mr. Choi was supposed to verify death. Choi? Junseok's head snapped up. Gone. Probably halfway to Busan. Madame Kang looked at her son. This isn't about one poisoned glass. This is a fracture. They're testing your authority by targeting you through the one person you stopped protecting. War. Silent. Surgical. They'd exposed his weakness without firing a shot. What do we do with him? Madame Kang nodded toward Min-jae. The cousin looked small, terrified. Junseok looked down at Hae-Rin. Something shifted. Singapore. Tonight. He doesn't come back. That's mercy. That's practicality. If we kill him, Busan knows their plan failed. If he disappears, they're waiting for confirmation. He met his mother's eyes. While they wait, we prepare. 4 hours later, Dr. Lim removed the tube. Hae-Rin's color had improved. The purple had stopped spreading. She'll live. No permanent cardiac damage. She'll need monitoring, but she'll recover. Junseok exhaled. Madame Kang touched his shoulder briefly, then left. Junseok stayed, watched Hae-Rin's chest rise and fall, watched her eyelids flutter. She was alive, but something else was true. She'd drunk that poison to save him, and part of her had drunk it to escape. 8 years of being dismissed until the only way to matter was to nearly die. When her eyes opened, they found his face. Junseok, she whispered. I'm here. She looked at him, really looked, then said the words that cracked something inside his chest. I know. Not relief, not gratitude, just acknowledgement. She'd always known he was there. He'd never known she was. Something inside Hae-Rin had survived the poison, but something else, the part that believed being a perfect wife would eventually be enough, had already broken, and neither of them knew yet if it could be repaired. Hae-Rin woke to white. White walls, white sheets, white light through gauze curtains. The private medical suite smelled like bleach and money. No monitors, just silence and flowers, orchids, white and purple in crystal, the kind you scent when you didn't know someone. Hae-Rin had always hated orchids, died too quickly. She'd told Junseok once, 3 years ago. He'd forgotten. The door opened. Madame Kang assessed her like a general. Functional, breathing, acceptable. You're awake. Yes. Dr. Lim says you'll recover fully. Madame Kang studied her, then spoke softly. What you did was foolish, I know, and brave. Your husband is outside, hasn't left since they brought you in. Her voice carried something new. He's waiting to thank you. Junseok entered carrying guilt, rumpled, 3-day stubble, wrinkled shirt. He sat beside her bed, not too close. Hae-Rin, you saved my life. She saw the exhaustion carved into his face. I don't know how to repay you. What you did, drinking that wine. Stop. She pushed herself up. Her chest ached. I need you to listen. Really listen. Not while checking your phone. Just listen. He nodded, set his phone face down, both hands visible. For once. You keep saying I saved your life. Like I'm some kind of hero. You are. I'm not. She cut him off. Or maybe I am, but not the way you think. Slow breath. I saw the poison. Yes. And I didn't want you to die. That's true. But that's not the only reason. Confusion flickered. For 8 years, I've eaten meals where you spoke to everyone but me. I've sat beside you and listened to you explain shipping routes to people who mattered. While I sat there, silent, irrelevant. His jaw tightened. I've slept in the same bed while you answered emails. I've said good morning to the back of your phone. I learned that interrupting you is worse than disappearing. Hae-Rin, I'm not finished. Steel underneath. You touch me without seeing me. You kiss me goodbye without tasting me. You ask how I am without waiting for an answer. For 8 years, I told myself this was marriage. That being a good wife meant being useful. Holding everything together so perfectly, you never noticed I was breaking. Direct eye contact. When I drank that wine, yes, part of me was trying to save you, but another part was just tired. Tired of what? Of not existing. The words hung. I thought maybe if I disappeared for real, the quiet would hurt less than this, than being here but not being seen, than mattering so little that your cousin built his plan around the fact you wouldn't notice me moving. Junseok's face went pale. I never meant. I know you didn't mean it. That's what makes it worse. You didn't mean to erase me. You just did. Slowly, over years, until the only way I could make you see me was to nearly die. She pressed a hand to her chest. And even then, it took 7 seconds. Silence. Heavy. His hands shook. Oh, I didn't know, he whispered. You never asked. He looked at her, really looked, and saw the truth. His wife hadn't just saved his life. She'd been dying for years, quietly, invisibly, right beside him. Hae-Rin's next words came barely above a whisper. When I drank that wine, part of me wasn't trying to save you. Part of me was hoping it would just end. Madame Kang arrived on the 3rd day. Not with flowers, not with condolences. Hae-Rin was sitting by the window, still pale, breathing on her own, just faint purple shadows beneath her skin. You look better. Not a compliment. An observation. She settled into the chair. Jun-seok has been here every night, not answering calls. He thinks he's atoning. She paused. Do you think he is? Hae-Rin looked at the grey river. I don't know what he thinks he's doing. But you know what you did. Not a question. I saved his life. Yes. And? The word was a scalpel. You've been in this family 8 years. You're intelligent, resilient. You've endured more than most would tolerate. She leaned forward. But endurance is not loyalty. I need to know which one you've been practicing. The distinction landed like a diagnosis. Something cracked open inside Hae-Rin's chest. You want the truth? Always. When I drank that wine, part of me did it to save him. She paused. But part of me did it because death felt quiet. Madame Kang didn't flinch. Go on. For 8 years, I've been invisible, not neglected. I was seen enough to be useful, to manage the household, make everything run perfectly. Her voice thinned. But I wasn't seen enough to matter. Not as a person with needs or limits or a breaking point. She swallowed. When I saw that poison, I had 3 seconds, and I thought that if I drank it, maybe it would finally be quiet. No more trying, no more being the wife who's always there, but never enough. Tears blurred her vision. The relief terrified me, not the poison. The fact that part of me wanted it. Silence. Madame Kang sat back. You didn't drink that wine as a martyr. No, you drank it as an escape. Yes. Hae-Rin's voice broke. I saved his life, but I also tried to save myself, and I don't know which one I wanted more. Madame Kang was quiet. Then she spoke, surgical. My son thinks you're a hero. He thinks you sacrificed yourself out of love he didn't deserve. She paused. He's wrong. Hae-Rin flinched. You made a choice that had nothing to do with him, and everything to do with being erased so completely. Dying felt like the only way to be seen. The truth was unbearable. He needs to know that, not because it will help him, because it's the only thing that might save this marriage. The marriage is already broken. Yes, it broke years ago. You've both been too afraid to say it. She stood. But broken things can sometimes be rebuilt, not the way they were. That version is gone, into something honest. She moved to the door, then stopped. Truth is the only currency left. Everything else, the apologies, the guilt, the flowers, is performance. He'll be here tonight, and you're going to tell him what you told me. Hae-Rin's chest tightened. He'll never forgive me. Forgiveness isn't the goal. Understanding is. Madame Kang looked back. He thinks this story is about you saving him, but the version that matters is the version where you were trying to save yourself. The door closed softly. Hae-Rin sat alone. Outside, the river kept moving. Inside, she prepared to destroy the only image Jun-seok had left of who she was, and maybe, finally, show him who she'd actually been all along. Jun-seok arrived at 8. White roses in hand, expensive, impersonal. Hae-Rin didn't reach for them. He set them aside. Sat. How are you feeling? Rehearsed. Better. Hands clasped between his knees. Before you say anything, Hae-Rin said quietly, I need to tell you something. For the first time in 8 years, he was listening without his phone. When I drank that wine, you thought I did it to save you. You did. Yes, but that's not why. Confusion. For 3 seconds, I had a choice. Warn you and be dismissed. Stay silent and become a widow, or drink it. She paused. I chose to finally matter, even if mattering meant dying. His face went pale. For 8 years, I've been invisible, not neglected, erased. Present, but irrelevant. Useful, but unseen. I managed your household, kept peace with your mother, absorbed every tension. I did it so well you stopped noticing I was doing it at all. Hae-Rin, don't. You need to hear this. He closed his mouth. When I saw that poison, part of me moved to save you, but there was another part. The part that realized if I drank it, it would finally be quiet. Quiet. No more trying to be enough. No more holding everything together while you looked through me. The relief terrified me. Not the poison. The fact that part of me wanted it. Silence. I didn't know, he whispered. That's exactly the problem. I can fix this. No. Absolute. Not with promises. Not with attention you suddenly pay because you feel guilty. Not with flowers I don't even like. He flinched. The marriage we had is gone. It's been gone for years. Then what do we do? I don't know, but we don't go back. We don't pretend. And I don't accept apologies from guilt instead of understanding. I do understand. Do you? Quiet. Dangerous. Do you understand you created the opening Min-jae used? That your dismissal was so complete, he built an assassination plan around it? Do you understand I've been dying slowly for 8 years, and you only noticed when it became literal? His face broke. The control through his father's assassination, hostile takeovers, rival threats, shattered. I'm sorry. Sorry doesn't undo 8 years. What do you need? I need you to stop thinking like a boss. He froze. You run an empire. You solve problems, but you can't deploy your way out of this. Her voice softened. No amount of power can fix what's broken. Only presence might. And I don't know if you know how to be present without being in control. The realization hit. He hadn't almost lost her. He had already lost her. Years ago. I don't know how to do this. Neither do I. Can we try? Hae-Rin looked at him. Outside, the river kept moving. I don't know. Not a promise. Not a rejection. Truth. I survived the poison. But I don't know if we survive this. He nodded, accepting what he couldn't control. I'll wait. Don't wait, she said quietly. Change. Actually change, and maybe when I'm ready, I'll see if you did. She didn't tell him she would stay. She didn't tell him she would leave. She told him the only thing that was true. She didn't know yet. And for the first time in their marriage, that uncertainty mattered more than any promise could. The execution room had been prepared. Plastic sheeting, clean tools, 3 men who didn't ask questions. Min-jae sat bound to a chair, ashen, breathing too fast. Betrayal meant blood. Blood meant message. Junseok's father had made him watch when he was 16. Madame Kang stood in the doorway. Junseok looked at his cousin and heard Hae-Rin's voice. No amount of power can fix what's broken. Only presence might. The old response. Make him disappear. Permanently. But Hae-Rin had nearly died because she'd been erased so completely, his cousin weaponized it. If he responded with his father's violence, nothing would change. Get him out of the chair, Junseok said quietly. The men hesitated. Get him out. Remove the plastic. They obeyed. Min-jae collapsed to his knees. Cousin, please. Stop talking. Silence. You're not going to die tonight. Min-jae's breath caught. Singapore. Tonight. You'll have enough money to start over if you're smart. He paused. You don't come back. Not ever. If I see you in Korea again, this mercy expires. Min-jae nodded frantically. Thank you. I'm not doing this for you. The words cut through. I'm doing this because my wife almost died, and I need to become someone different. He looked at Madame Kang. My father would have killed you, but those rules almost cost me everything, so I'm breaking them. Madame Kang stepped forward. The organization will see this as weakness. Let them. I'd rather be weak and present than powerful and alone. Recognition in her expression. She'd buried a husband who chose power over presence. Busan will still be waiting, she said. I know, we'll handle them, but not tonight. He turned to the men. Put him on a plane. They hauled Min-jae out. The door closed. Your father, Madame Kang began. My father died because he made too many enemies. I don't want to die that way. And I don't want to lose what matters while trying to protect it. Hae-Rin changed you. Hae-Rin almost dying changed me. She nodded. The advisors will need an explanation. Tell them the truth. Anyone with a problem can leave. Some will. Then we'll know who understands where we're going. She smiled faintly. First real smile in years. Your father built this on fear and blood. You're building something different. I'm building something that doesn't cost me my marriage. It might cost you the empire. Then it costs me the empire. He looked at the empty chair. What's the point of controlling everything if I lose the only person who makes any of it matter? 3 days later, the organization stabilized through clarity, not threats. 2 advisors resigned. Quietly, the others stayed. Busan would still need handling. Threats would still emerge, but the response would be different. Strategic, controlled, measured. Jun-seok sat in his office, looking at the wedding photo he'd never really looked at before. Hae-Rin in white, him in a tux, both smiling. He'd been so focused on building an empire that he'd forgotten to build a marriage. As he could change how he ran the organization, exile instead of execute, mercy over message, but none of that mattered if he couldn't prove the same change at home. In quiet moments, in conversations, in the presence Hae-Rin had begged for, strategy was easy. Intimacy was the harder battlefield, and if he wanted her to stay, if he wanted to become worthy of the woman who drunk poison rather than stay invisible, he had to learn to fight a different kind of war, one where power didn't matter, only presence did. The first morning after the hospital, Ji-hoon woke to the smell of burning rice. He found Hae-Rin in the kitchen, staring at a blackened pot with an expression somewhere between defiance and exhaustion. She didn't apologize, didn't explain, just met his eyes with a challenge he'd never seen before. I ordered groceries, she said flatly. I don't know how to cook them. 20 years of marriage. He'd never asked if she could cook, had never asked what she could do beyond smile and stay silent. Ji-hoon set down his phone, still face down on the counter where he'd placed it the night before, and picked up the pot. Then we learned together. The skepticism in her eyes was sharp enough to draw blood. The days that followed were a study in discomfort. Ji-hoon had commanded empires from boardrooms, negotiated treaties in blood-scented basements, but he had no idea how to listen to his wife. Every instinct screamed to fix, to solve, to dominate the conversation with solutions. The garden needs, Hae-Rin would begin. I'll have someone. I didn't ask you to fix it. Her voice was quiet, but it landed like a slap. I was just telling you. He learned to bite his tongue, to let silence exist without filling it, to nod and say, tell me more, even when his mind raced toward efficiency and answers. It was excruciating. On the 3rd day, his mother called. Ji-hoon watched Hae-Rin's face go carefully blank, that practiced porcelain mask she'd worn for 2 decades. Don't answer it, he said. She blinked. What? You don't have to. He reached across the table, not quite touching her hand. Not today. Not if you don't want to. The phone rang until it didn't. Hae-Rin stared at the silent screen like it might explode. She'll be furious, she whispered. Let her. Something flickered in her expression. Not quite hope, but maybe its younger, warier cousin. He discovered she liked poetry. Not the classical texts his mother had forced her to memorize, but modern verse, raw and strange, and nothing like the woman he thought he'd married. He learned she hated the color of their bedroom walls, had hated it for 15 years. He learned she'd wanted to study architecture before her family arranged their marriage, that she used to sketch buildings in the margins of household ledgers, hiding them like contraband. Why didn't you tell me? He asked, looking at the delicate drawings she'd finally shown him. You never asked. No accusation in her voice, just fact. That hurt worse than anger would have. By the end of the week, the household staff had learned new rules. Hae-Rin's requests were not suggestions. Her schedule was not to be overridden. When she said no, it meant no. Ji-hoon enforced it personally. And the shift in power dynamics rippled through the house like an earthquake in slow motion. His associates noticed. Min-seo called it suspicious. Tae-yang called it weakness. His mother called it a phase. On the 7th night, Hae-Rin spoke at dinner without being addressed first. Ji-hoon set down his chopsticks and listened. Really listened. Didn't interrupt, didn't redirect. Just let her words exist in the space between them. When she finished, she looked at him with those dark, unreadable eyes. Why now? She asked. Why does it take dying for you to see me? He had no good answer. Nothing that wouldn't sound like an excuse. I don't know, he admitted, but I'm trying to do better. Trying isn't enough. But she didn't leave the table, didn't retreat into silence. She stayed and spoke again, and he listened. Later, alone in his study, Ji-hoon found himself staring at his reflection in the window, a powerful man brought low by burned rice and uncomfortable conversations, learning that control and connection were not the same thing. Outside, a car idled in the driveway longer than necessary. His security team would investigate, but Ji-hoon barely noticed. He was too busy thinking about architecture, about poetry, about a woman he'd lived beside for 20 years without ever really seeing. In the bedroom, Hae-Rin stood before the mirror, studying her own reflection. The bruises had faded. The poison had left her system. But trust, real trust, would take longer to rebuild, if it could be rebuilt at all. She touched her throat where the burn had been, then looked toward the study where her husband sat learning to be human. Tomorrow she would decide. Tonight she would wait. The invitation came from Ji-hoon's mother, as expected. Sunday dinner, the whole family, no exceptions. Hae-Rin held the embossed card between her fingers, feeling its weight. Once, this would have filled her with dread. The careful choreography of invisibility, the exhausting mathematics of silence. We don't have to go, Ji-hoon said quietly. She looked at him, really looked, saw the tension in his shoulders, the way he waited for her answer instead of deciding for her. Yes, she said, we do. But this time, she would go differently. The dining room looked the same table, same shitsi, the seating arrangement that had trapped her at the margins for 20 years. Same crystal glasses, catching the light like fragments of ice. But Hae-Rin was not the same. She wore red, not the muted colors Ji-hoon's mother preferred, but a dress the color of poppies and defiance. Her hair was down. Her wedding ring caught the light. She looked like a woman who had chosen to be there. The room fell quiet when she entered. Ji-hoon's mother recovered first, her smile sharp and practiced. Hae-Rin, how vibrant. Thank you, mother. No bow. Just acknowledgement. Junseok watched from across the table, his expression unreadable. His wife, Soo-min, whispered something that earned a subtle shake of his head. They sat. The servers brought food, and for the first time in 2 decades, no one reached across Hae-Rin to serve someone else first. Ji-hoon had seen to that. Dinner began with the usual topics: business, politics, gossip dressed as concern. Hae-Rin ate slowly, tasting each bite instead of mechanically clearing her plate. When Ji-hoon's mother began discussing a charity event, she turned to Hae-Rin with practiced dismissiveness. Of course you'll attend as Ji-hoon's representative. Wear something appropriate this time. Before, Hae-Rin would have nodded, agreed, disappeared into compliance. Now, she set down her chopsticks. No, she said clearly. I have other plans that weekend. The silence was seismic. Ji-hoon's mother blinked. I'm sorry. I said no. Hae-Rin's voice didn't rise, didn't waver. I'm visiting an architecture exhibition. I've been looking forward to it. Architecture. A word she'd never spoken at this table. A dream she'd buried so deep. Even she'd almost forgotten it existed. Junseok's eyes widened. Just slightly, but enough. He glanced at his brother, then back at Hae-Rin. Then he did something unexpected. He waited. Ji-hoon's mother opened her mouth, no doubt to deliver one of her surgical rebukes, but Ji-hoon spoke first. Hae-Rin's schedule is her own, he said quietly. If she can't attend, she can't attend. The words hung in the air like a gauntlet thrown. His mother's jaw tightened. This family has obligations. This family, Junseok interrupted, and everyone turned, has forgotten something. He looked directly at Hae-Rin, and for the first time, she saw something like respect in his eyes. Empires don't fall from enemy attacks, he said slowly. They fall when the people holding them together stop being seen. When loyalty becomes erasure. He paused. When silence is mistaken for strength. Soo-min touched his hand, a small gesture of solidarity. Ji-hoon's mother looked like she'd bitten into glass. The dinner continued, but the temperature had changed. Conversation flowed around Hae-Rin, but no longer over her. When she spoke, people listened. When she chose silence, it was hers. Not imposed, not expected, but chosen. Near the end of the meal, as servers cleared plates, Ji-hoon reached across the table. Not to take, not to control. Just his hand, palm up, offered. Hae-Rin looked at it, felt the weight of 20 years pressing against this single moment. Trust was not rebuilt in weeks. Wounds this deep did not heal cleanly, but recognition, real recognition, had to start somewhere. She placed her hand in his, not submission, not ownership, acknowledgement that she was seen, that she existed, that her presence was choice, not obligation. Later, as they left, Junseok caught her arm gently in the hallway. The poison, he said quietly. It was meant for him. You knew that. Yes. Why did you drink it? Hae-Rin smiled. Small, sad, true. Because survival isn't enough, and I was tired of being invisible. She walked away, leaving him standing in the hallway, finally understanding what he'd witnessed that night. Not sacrifice. Revolution. Outside, Ji-hoon held the car door open. Waited. Let her decide when to enter. Hae-Rin looked back at the house, the empire built on silent women and invisible suffering, and then at the man learning slowly to see her. Let's go home, she said, and chose, for the first time in 20 years, to mean it. Thank you for following through with the story. She didn't drink the poison to be brave. She drank it because she was tired of not existing. So here's the real question. If someone finally started seeing you after almost losing you, would you stay? Drop your answer in the comments. And if stories like this make you feel understood instead of entertained, share this video and subscribe to this channel, because the quiet stories are the ones that change people.